Your feet parallel, so basically your toes are pointing forwards, or wherever you're facing, your toes are pointing that way. And I'd like you to just focus in on the feet to begin with. I want you to bring the weight forwards a bit so that the weight is centered on the balls of the feet. And then, using the balls of the feet as anchor points, lift the toes up a little bit off the ground, off the floor, and then try and elongate them, try and make them a little bit longer. So I say that rather than stretch them, because I don't want any vigorous stretching. I just want you to see if you can open the knuckle joints of your toes a little bit. And then once you've got that, place them down again, starting with the big toes and then moving around 2 by 2 or toe by toe, as you want to say, to the little toes, and then around the outside edges of the feet into the heel, so that you've got a good secure footing on the floor, but your weight is still centered on the balls of the feet. Okay, so keeping a vague awareness on that as best you can, then soften the legs. So try to relax the big leg muscles as best you can. Not completely, otherwise you'll fall into a big flop on the floor, but just ease off them a little bit. So that what happens is you sink down, what we call sinking. So have you ever heard the term sinking in Tai Chi? It's mistranslated a lot of the time, and people think it means something else, but it's about this relaxation of the legs. So Tai Chi, they tend to draw on yin-yang philosophy to explain what's going on. So they would say that this is yin, having yin in the legs, so that they're soft. And then just move the pelvis backwards, but keep your head where it is, if you see what I mean, vertically. So that basically you're leaning forwards a little bit from the hips, but keeping the weight centered on the balls of the feet. The arms should be relaxed like a pair of curtains. The shoulders should be soft. And then with all that, what's going on now is that gravity is starting to pull the pelvis down a bit because you soften the legs. We've got a weight. You think of it like a weight on a plumb line, maybe. So because you've got this additional force, this feeling of additional force going down, you have an opportunity to elongate the spine a bit. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, you keep everything as it is in the legs, but just try to make the head go up higher. So just try to lift the head up. Try to make the top of your head touch the ceiling. Very nice. Okay. So we can hang around here because actually it's very therapeutic to stand like this, but I'm going to get you to move a bit. So we're going to start to open up the hip joints by pivoting the pelvis backwards and forwards, sort of side to side, depending on which way you want to call it. But basically we're opening and closing alternate hips by doing this. Keeping your knees pointing forwards, because we don't want sideward forces going onto the knees. So try and keep the knees pointing in the same directions as the toes, forwards. Keeping that subtle forward lean from the pelvis, from the hips. Because the arms are like a pair of curtains, they're just going to flail around and do their own thing. You don't need to worry about them. As I said, the shoulders are soft as well. But the head, that needs to be on top of the shoulders. So if you have a bit of a forward head forward posture, try and bring it back and up. Okay. So what's going on here is, first of all, we've stretched open the spine a bit. So we're opening, we're exercising the joints that are in the spine. And now we're also exercising the joints that are in the hips. We're opening and closing them. I'd like you guys to carry on, please, while I give Rosemary something to do.
I'm doing what you're doing.
Okay, well, we're going to change that slightly. So I'm just going to sit down. Hopefully you can see me all right.
Yeah.
What I'd like you to do is to try to, if you can, just sitting still, let the arms relax like that down the sides. But keep their head up on top of the shoulders, yeah? And then lean forwards in the hips a little bit. As if you're about to get up, almost, yeah?
Yeah.
And then what I'd like you to do is to kind of do a sort of a rotation, so that in this forward lean, you're just rotating round, so that we're trying to work the hip joints as opposed to the shoulders. Yeah. So it's not, you're not going like this. I'm going to walk close to the camera. Your body isn't just doing that, or should I say this. It's actually going like this. Does that make sense? Yeah. And whatever you do, don't strain the back.
Okay.
Yeah. So try to keep everything in the back straight. And the turning is coming from the pelvis. So we're really trying to get the hip joints open by doing this. So your knees are still pointing in the same directions as the toes. Same with our folks that are standing up. But we're just doing this turning in the torso and hopefully you can feel a little bit of pulling in the hip joint. And so
Yes.
basically, whichever direction you go in, the opposite hip joint will be opening slightly. And just gently go with that, yeah? Gently go with that. And you can use your arms and hands as support if you want to or need to. So for everybody really, these exercises are not about moving the shoulders. They're absolutely not about moving the shoulders. The only reason why your shoulders should be moving is because the pelvis is moving. Yes, if your pelvis can't move, then moving the shoulders doesn't make sense. Because one of the core is to use the core. One of the core principles is to use the core in your movements in Tai Chi. Everything should originate here in what the Chinese call the dantian, the lower dantian, the core, basically. And this is one of the reasons why we take the weight out of the back. This leaning forwards that we do is bringing the weight of the upper body out of the lower spine into the abs. So one of the reasons we do that is so that we can free up the lower spine, so that we can stretch it more. But also we do it because we want everything to be beginning here. So everything comes from the core. If that ain't moving, nothing else needs to move. So we all think perhaps that Tai Chi, when you think about Tai Chi, it's kind of floating around the park or a village hall or wherever it is that you happen to be, on the beach. Well, it can be, but it only works if you're doing that from the core. You know, if that floating around that you're doing is originating in your core, then that's fine. But it doesn't have to be that. It can even be just this. We're doing Tai Chi because it's originating in the core, the movement that we're making. Good. So, have a pause. If you're standing up, check in again on your posture. So make sure you've still got this structure in the feet. Because what can happen, you see, is with the feet, when you relax the legs, people tend to relax their feet as well and the arch collapses. And I don't want that to happen for you. I want you to keep a good, secure structure in the feet, nicely secured to the ground. The legs are soft though. The bum is back over the heels, it's vertically above the heels, and you're leaning forwards from the hips so that the weight is out of the small of the back and in the abs. Arms are relaxed, shoulders are relaxed. Okay, so holding that, if you sat down, then it's just what I said before. We just sat forward a bit so that the weight, some of the weight you'll feel, some of the weight of your body is going into your feet a little bit. Your feet's taking some of the strain. And that's great because that then creates an upwards lift for the back without you even realizing you're doing it, which is what we're after really. Now, either you can be sat down or standing up, whichever you're doing. See if you can move the shoulders out sideways. Sorry, whenever I do this, it makes me chuckle a little bit because it opens the chest. And there's an intimate connection between muscles around the sternum and smiling and laughing. So it does make people laugh when it starts to open up. So just see if you can make your shoulders move to the side, but keep them soft vertically. So they're moving a little bit, maybe a nanometer or a micrometer or even a millimeter if you're good. Sideways, horizontally, but they're not moving vertically. They're just at rest vertically. So that hopefully your hands will move a little bit further apart. Just try to get the shoulders apart. And why? Because we want to try to make the cavity in the chest bigger. All this stuff that we're doing is we're trying to make ourselves bigger. This movement in the hips, the stretching in the spine, we're trying to make the spaces between our joints bigger. And also, in fact, any cavities. We want to make this bigger. Sorry, folks, if you're going for a flat belly, but if you ever heard of a chi belly, then you're trying to make this bigger, but also this bigger. And then second year work, the cavity in the head as well needs to be made bigger. Tai Chi means big, doesn't it, Martin?
That's right.
Means big. And this is what it's related to. It's related to creating a big body space, a large body space. Tai Chi is also a martial art, and one of the core components is creating this big body space. And rather than trying to stop people from going into it, you want to let people in, because within this big body space, you have complete control. So if somebody wants to do damage to you, bring them into your space, because then you have control of them and they can't do anything, provided you do a few other things on top of them. So we're trying to make the chest big, we're trying to make the shoulders big, but it's just a very subtle, gentle thing. It's not a vigorous stretch. We're just trying to move them apart, ease them apart, create this space in the chest area. And if you don't feel the reflex to smile, have a smile as well if you can. Even if it's a manic, mad grin. That's also a very good self-defense mechanism, I find. None of you are smiling. Turn the corners of your mouths up. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to extend this. So I'd like you to then just allow the arms to come up, but we're not lifting them up with the shoulders. So you want to try and keep the shoulders soft. Instead, you're kind of sending out. So you're trying to stretch out sideways, right the way through to the tips of the fingers. And then we're going to add to this. We're going to imagine that you've got somebody on each hand, somebody pulling very gently each hand in opposite directions. And you're just going to let them. So you're just letting them go, you're letting the body go to separate. So again, we're trying to create this additional space in the chest area. Very good. So we now have what I would call a linear stretch. I'm a bit of an engineer at heart, you see, so I'm going to occasionally I may use technical jargon. We've got a linear stretch. In other words, we've got a straight line going from the tips of the left hand, fingers of the left hand to the tips of the fingers of the right hand. We're going to change that to a kind of a corkscrew stretch, a spiral stretch. So we have two spirals going in opposite directions, coming out from the shoulders, going around the outside of the arms, and then coming out the fingers. I'm going to come in close so you can see what I mean. So the hands are kind of sitting on a pair of imaginary poles that are just in front of your hips. Yeah, they're just level with the hips. The elbows are sticking out a bit. So we've kind of got this sending out still happening in the shoulders. You're still trying to move the shoulders out sideways. You're trying to move the elbows more out sideways. But then at the elbows, that's where things change direction. Yeah, and it's all stretching inwards a bit from the elbows through to the fingertips. So the chest is becoming bigger, and we're basically making, without realizing it, the arms a bit longer, a bit more stretched. But still, if we have this forwards lean, so the weight is still out of the lower back, the small of the back, brought into the abs. Let me see how this works sitting down. So just hold that position, that stance, just see if you can hold it for a bit. Yeah, that kind of works. So if you sat down, rather than the hands being in front of the hips, your knees are going to be in the way. So just move the hands further apart so that they're not obstructed by the legs. You're still getting the same effect because you're still getting this stretch across the shoulders, around the arms, through to the tips of the fingers. Okay. So we're just going to hold this stance for a bit, yeah? This stance is called Tai Chi For. And Sanswang means standing on poles. Sometimes it's translated as standing like a pole. The only analogy I can think of, or the only reason why we might say that directly is because it's as if you've got your hands resting on a pair of poles. But actually that's not where it comes from, and we don't have time to explain it now. But if we ever see each other down the pub or in a cafe at some point, just ask me then and I'll give you a full explanation about it, because it's very interesting, but it doesn't help us with what we're doing. Okay, now what we're going to do from here is we're going to do a proper moving exercise. What I'd like you to do is to just rotate the hands a little bit until your little fingers are pointing forwards, and then stretch the little fingers forwards. Then shifting the hands apart a little bit, move them a little bit more so that the ring fingers are stretching forwards. And then shifting the hands apart a bit more, stretching the forefingers, the middle fingers forwards. And then a bit more, stretching the forefingers forwards, and then a bit more. Keep turning the hands until the thumbs are pointing forwards, and then stretch them forwards. And again, we've got this couple of people, imaginary people, pulling our thumbs away from us. So just let the thumbs go. And as they do, rotate the arms so that the fingers are pointing in towards the floor. Now, because your arms, the other end of your arms are attached to your shoulders, they're not just going to go forwards, they're going to rise up. So just let them rise up. But don't lift them up with the shoulders. Keep the shoulders down and soft. So that ultimately, you know, the longest your arms can be in that direction is when they are horizontal. It's when the hands are level with the shoulders. So just let the hands come level with the shoulders, but not higher, just that far. And when you do get that far, try to make it so that your thumbs are in line with the forearms. Let me show you. The thumbs are in line with the forearms, so that you're opening this joint here, in this area, and trying to make the thumb straight. Something I used to find really hard to begin with, because I've got double jointed thumbs, so they want to do that. Try not to let them do that. Try to just turn them forwards, and the fingers are turning into the ground. If anybody is experiencing extreme pain, please shout. Now what we're going to do is rotate the arms and the shoulder joints so that the palms are facing the floor. And then we're going to flex the wrists a little bit so the palms are facing a little bit away, but mostly the floor. And then I would like you to push the head up at the same time as push the palms of the hands down. Very good. So if you're sitting down, this is your cue to bring the hands further apart so that they can get past the knees. If you're standing up, you just want them to come down in front of the hip joints, so that you finish up back in Tai Chi where you started, yeah? So if you're somewhere else, kind of you've gone a bit wrong, or it's just, you know, flowed in a particular direction, just at the end, make it flow back into Tai Chi. Tai Chi sounds fine. Let's do that again. Stretching the little fingers, the ring fingers, the middle fingers, the forefingers, the thumbs. And then sending the thumbs forwards and rotating the arms so that the fingers are pointing in towards the floor and the thumbs are in line with the forearms. And you just let the hands come up to a level with the shoulders. The arms don't need to be completely locked out straight. It's good to keep the elbows slightly soft. And now that you're here, just check in on your shoulders and remind them that they need to relax. Yeah, just give them permission to soften off. They're not holding the weight of your hands. You've got a couple of guys holding them up for you, imaginary guys. Then rotate the arms and the shoulder joints so the palms are facing the ground, the floor. Flex the wrists a little bit so the hands are a little bit pointing away from you. And then push down, push up, and then bring the hands back. So it's almost like you've got your hands on the edge of something and you're scraping something off your hands just to bring them back into place. Yes, and it will make you yawn, I'm afraid. That's a good response, especially if you're struggling to sleep. I honestly don't mind, Rosemary, if you nod off in the middle of this. That's okay. That's perfectly fine.
I'll be so happy.
As long as you got a good result. We'll do this one more time, okay? So again, we're stretching the little fingers forwards, then the ring fingers, then the middle fingers, then the full fingers. I keep forgetting my middle fingers. And then the thumbs. The thumbs go forwards, rotating the arms so the fingers pointing into the ground and letting the hands rise up, keeping the shoulders soft. Don't use the shoulders to lift them up. Rotate, flex the wrists, and then sending down. As you're sending down, be sure to send the head up at the same time. Always looking horizontal. My teacher used to say, if you spend your life looking at the ground, you're very quickly going to go there. Wherever you look, you go. If you spend your life looking at the sky, then you're probably going to be spending your life above the clouds. So looking horizontal. It gives you the best neck posture that you can get. That's what we're after, really. Okay, so now what we're going to do is have a shakeout. So if you've got pain, if you've got prickles, if you've got tingles, some people get cold or hot, whatever sensations you may have, even if you've got nothing, but whatever sensations you may have, we can shake them out. So we're just going to cross the arms in front of the midline of the body, so rounding the shoulders forwards, and then shaking the hands out. Using the shoulders, keeping the arms fairly loose, and the hands and fingers very loose, just giving them a shake. So any sensations that you might be picking up in the hands from doing that exercise will hopefully quickly shift out. Then find something that's securely attached to the floor or a wall, and just don't lean against it necessarily, but just have it there as a safety measure. Standing with our feet together. If you're sitting down, I'll show you what to do in a minute with this one. So just relax for a moment, Rosemary. So standing with your feet together, pick a foot, any foot, doesn't matter which one, because we're going to do both of them ultimately. Lift that foot that you picked off the ground by about 1/2 inch, move it forwards a foot length, so it's just in front of the other foot, and then tilt it at the heel so that the toes are trying to point towards the ceiling. And then elongate the toes, so stretch the foot a little bit, and then stretch the back of the leg, coming out from the bum, down the back of the knee, through to the heel. So you're kind of sending something, a stretch into the ground, but the heel is just a little bit off the ground. And then once you've got that stretch, agitate. So try and shake it up and down from the hip. To do this, you've got to move the pelvis a little bit. But you don't necessarily have to think about moving the pelvis. You just think about shaking the leg, and that happens. And what can happen then is you get this vibration coming through the leg, but it'll also creep up through the body as well. If you can't get the shape, it doesn't matter. The most important part of this is the stretch. Okay, when you've done that for a while, swap feet. So bringing the feet back together again, do the same on the other side. Okay, so now that I've explained that to you guys, you can carry on doing that, and I'm going to show Rosemary how to shake out her feet. So Rosemary, what you're going to do is stretch out one of your feet. So whichever feet you're going to shake, just stretch it out. You're probably not going to be able to shake it, but that doesn't matter, as I just said. So I don't know if you can see what I'm doing there, but
yeah.
Basically my leg is pretty much locked. I'm still taking some of my weight in my other foot. I'm flexing the heel, so that the foot is pointing upwards vertically, and I'm trying to elongate the toes. And then I'm just stretching out through the heel. So there's a deliberate sort of sending thought pattern going, coming out of the hip joint, down the full length of the leg and through the heel.
Okay.
Make sure you do the same on the other side after a while. It can be quite useful to wriggle the toes when you're doing this, by the way, I find.
Thank you.
And have a sip of drink as well. Everyone's disappeared. Probably gone for a drink. As long as you haven't gone down the pub, that's fine. Rosemary, you're going to have to sit this one out, I'm afraid, but just have a look to see what they're doing. And if you want to give it a try, please do, but take it steady, yeah? We're going to do some what I call Tai Chi walking. And first of all, I don't want to give you too much of an explanation because we're running out of time. I've already used up half an hour. So I don't want to talk too much, and I do have this tendency to talk a lot. Again, ask me in a cafe or a pub if you ever see me down there, and I'll talk you through. But basically, we do a lot of walking in Tai Chi, very slow walking, and therefore, because this walking is very slow, we tend to spend quite a bit of time on one leg, one or the other. And that's why Tai Chi is good for your balance, because you're doing these slow movements which involve steps. And you know, if you can't do Tai Chi, then maybe you can fall over. But if you can do Tai Chi, in order to be able to do Tai Chi, you've got to be able to do this slow stepping. So a lot of the time when I try to teach this to people, they say, well, hang on a minute, isn't Tai Chi supposed to be able to make me better at balancing? And I say, yes. And they say, well, why am I having to do this exercise to learn how to balance? And I say, well, because you need to know how to balance to do Tai Chi. And the only way that you can do that is by learning. And this is how we learn. So again, we start with our feet parallel, shoulder width apart. Try and stand good, as we were doing at the start. That's the preparatory stance, which incidentally is called Wu Ji. Can you remember what Wu Ji means, Martin?
Wu Ji. Forgotten.
Never mind. And what you're going to do, what I'm going to get you to do, is to shift your weight so that it's entirely in the right foot. You may have to move a little bit to the side, so that you can lift the left foot off the ground. Now, if you're starting to lose your balance when you test that, so do test it, lift the foot off the ground. And if you start to lose your balance, just put tippy toes back down again, so that you've hopefully got a little bit more control. Then step forwards about 1.5 foot lengths. So a comfortable step without putting any weight in the foot, so that you're just touching the floor. It's almost like you're stroking the floor with your foot. If you've got a nice shag pile carpet, you might want to give it a stroke with the foot. That's that kind of sense to it. And then once the foot is on the ground, then you can move your weight into it. So moving the weight forwards and across into the left foot, so that all of your weight is in it. And you know all of your weight is in it when it's centered on the ball of the foot. That's what this centering on the ball of the foot is all about, is getting your weight securely in that side. So once it's there, once your body is over your foot, it's really quite easy to lift the other foot off the ground and then step that one in front. Yeah, again, about 1.5 foot lengths. Basically, as far as it will go, it will comfortably go without you having to stretch and reach out and put weight in it before it meets the floor. Then shift your weight forwards into that one. And again, same again, you're bringing the weight so that it's completely over the ball of the foot, so that you can lift the left foot off the ground and place that in front of you. And then so on. Again, shifting the weight forwards so that it's completely on the left side. Lift the right foot off the ground, step it in front of you, but don't put any weight in it yet. And then shift your weight forwards once it's securely on the ground. and keep going. Now, do feel free to talk yourself through this if you want to, either by actually speaking it or by thinking it, if you see what I mean, imagining that you're saying it. Keep going until you reach a wall. When you reach a wall, turn around and go back the other way. I'm not going to do that because I've got my back to you, and I'm going to think that that's rude. I'm just going to walk back. Now, I'm very lucky I've got a long lounge, so I can get away with doing that, but it doesn't matter. So long as you've got enough space to take a step, maybe 2 steps, you're okay, because you can just turn around and go back the other way. On a good day, if it's not raining and it's not too cold, then it's pretty good to do outside, especially if you've got a back garden. So to begin with, it's quite useful to do it quite slowly so that you can really think through the movements. Because when you're consciously thinking about it, when you're using your cognitive processing, if you like, then it's useful to think about it slowly, to do these things slowly, break it down piece by piece. I wasn't to say step by step, but it's more than that. You know, you need to break down each step into elements. And if you ever have a little hiccup where you feel like you're going to lose your balance, chances are it's one of a few things. First thing is you don't actually have all of your weight in the foot that you think that you do have. You've still got weight in the other foot. All of a sudden you're going to lose your balance. That's the biggest thing. The other thing is your posture. So if you tend to have, for example, a forward posture, I'm exaggerating obviously, then the weight from your head is going to tip you over. So you want to keep the head on top of the shoulders and keep the legs soft. This brings your center of gravity down and helps you with your balance, helps you with your coordination. So I hope you're paying attention to this, Rosemary, because when you do feel ready to walk in the week, I can see someone waiting to come into the room. I don't know how long we've been waiting for. But when you feel ready, you can have a go at practicing it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Let me just let Covey in. Excuse me. Right, I'll do a few more steps and then I'll move us on to the next part of this. But basically, from here on, I'm going to build some more stuff onto this, and it's probably not a brilliant idea to practice the more advanced bits before you've properly got this secure. So just this normal walking. I mean, it's not very, you might say normal, that doesn't seem normal to me. Everybody okay?
Yeah.
So what are we going to do now? We're going to do this. So you start in this standing position, but actually I'd like to try and sink a bit deeper if you can. So you're just going to sink a little bit deeper. By that, what I mean is you soften the legs a little bit more. And therefore, because your bum's lower, you've got to lean forwards a little bit more to keep the weight centered on the balls of the feet. It's not a massive lean, but you may feel like you're sticking your bum out a bit. If you do, you're getting it right. So don't worry about it too much. So we're a little bit deeper sunk, and we're going to do this thing with the pelvis again, yeah? Only slower. So we're just turning the pelvis, keeping the knees pointing in the same direction. Now, what I'd like you to do is to try to coordinate the movement, this rotational movement of the pelvis, with a shift in your weight, so that you shift your weight across into the right side as your right hip is closing. You can slow it right down so that you can figure out what's going on. So that when your right hip is fully closed, your weight is fully in the right side, and you're free to step. And then you're good to go the other way. So you shift the weight forwards and turn the pelvis at the same time. so that as the weight's going forwards, the pelvis is turning, so that ultimately, when all of your weight is in the left side, the left hip is fully closed. And you're free to lift up the right foot off the ground and step that in front of you. And hopefully you'll notice that because you've got the pelvis turned, you can step the foot a bit further, but don't. It just makes it a lot easier to step it out. And then again, drive the weight forwards and turn the pelvis. So that you're closing now the right hip as you're driving the weight into the right foot. Make sure your weight is fully over that right foot before you lift the left foot off the ground. Otherwise you lose your balance. And then step forwards. And carry on. See how it goes. If it feels or looks wrong, doesn't seem right to you, ask, please. Or have a look at what I'm doing, see how I'm doing it. So my pelvis is turning into the side that I'm shifting my weight into. A few more steps. Remember, it's not the shoulders that are leading the way, it's the pelvis. The shoulders just follow it because they're attached. Everybody okay? Okay, we're going to make a subtle change to what we're doing. It's the same, except that on the right side, you don't step it in front. So let me just show you what happens with my feet without doing anything else. Yeah, so I step forwards with the left side, and then I step alongside it. Forwards with the left side, step alongside it. I'm not stepping forwards. I'm stepping alongside on the right side. I'll show you that in full swing, if you'll pardon the pun. Yeah, so with the pelvis moving as well. So I turn the pelvis and shift my weight into the right foot, and then step forwards with the left foot. Then shift my weight forwards and across into the left foot, turn the pelvis back, closing the left hip, and then I step alongside. So at that moment, it's a good idea to look down, and I can see that actually I'm still getting it wrong. I'm about a toe length too far forwards. So while my weight's still on this side, I can just slide my foot back a bit, and then I can go back into it and do it again. Step. Shift the weight forwards, turn the pelvis, step alongside. That's better. Turn the pelvis back. So as I'm turning the pelvis back, I'm shifting my weight back across into the right side, step forwards, shift the weight forwards, turn the pelvis, close the left hip, step alongside. So remember what I said, this stuff is probably something that you may struggle to reasonably practice without somebody to look at as you're doing it. If you don't, that's fine. But the first thing that we did, that's a really good one to practice. That gives you foundation for this. Everybody okay with that? There's more. Okay, so this is something that Rosemary can do as well, or at least Rosemary, you can do part of it.
Okay.
And I'm going to show Rosemary first of all. So everybody else, please, can I get you to shake the hands out? Yeah, so crossing the hands in front of the body and shaking out. And when you've done that, shake the feet out as well in the same way as I showed you before. Rosemary, whilst they're doing that, so again, you're sat forwards, and again, you've got the hands either side of the knees. I'm going to try doing this standing up, but I'm sat down. Imagine I'm sat down, my hands are either side of my knees. And then I'm stretching across the shoulders, just a gentle elongation across the shoulders, opening the chest, and this stretch is coming right the way down the arms. So it's quite an active position. You're not just sort of hanging around there. So this thing that I got you to do before, try and do it with the hands in that position. And what you want to try to achieve, remembering that the movement is coming from the pelvis, yes, coming from the core. Everything else is moving because of that. See if you can make circles with the hands as you're turning the torso around. So it's almost like you've got, as I've explained to other people, you know, you've got a cloth in each hand and a pair of tables, and you're wiping the tables. But you want to try and create a circling. So as you come round, as you close in, or should I say, as you open on the left side, shall we say, then the left hand is coming out and forwards. And then when you close the left side, the left hand is coming in and backwards. So it's making this circle in this direction. And then the right hand does the opposite. Yeah, the right hand goes out on the right side and forwards, and then in and back on the right side. So it's doing all of this because of the way in which you're turning your core. Okay. So have a go at doing that. Everybody else, you're going to do that standing up. So we're standing in this Tai Chi Fan. Yeah, so you're sunk a bit deeper in the legs. You've got this pair of corkscrews that go in opposite directions, that are your arms. And we're going to turn the pelvis and use that to make the hands turn. So when the hip joint opens, the corresponding hand goes out to the side and forwards. So it's making an outside part of a circle. And then when you close the hip, the hand comes in front of the navel, and then it comes backwards. And of course, at the same time, the other hand is doing the opposite thing, so that you're making two circles. It's not easy. So don't beat yourself up if you think, I can't do this. Just give it a try. And know that you can do it. And the way that you learn these things is by practicing, just trying it out. And when you try it out, you see, it doesn't matter if you get it wrong. You just go, well, okay, that's not quite working. What is it that I'm doing wrong? Whereas if you just stand there and do nothing, then you've got no way of working it out. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Kung Fu Panda. There's one moment in the film where he's got his hand like this and he's holding onto the tiger, you know, the nemesis. And he says, what? You know the whooshy finger? And he asked him, how did you find out about the whooshy finger? And he said, oh, I figured it out. And that's how we, you know, you need some instruction, but you've got to figure these things out a little bit. So that's what you're doing. We're doing this circling in the hands. And the hand goes out and forwards as the hip opens, and then it goes in and backwards as the hip closes. And the looser you are on the hips and the pelvis, the freer you can be with it. You know, you can go fast, you can go slow, you can do it small, or you can do it big. I don't know the Chinese name for this movement, but its English translation is earthquake. Good. Right then, the final piece to this puzzle. Rosemary, you're just going to have to carry on doing that. It's really therapeutic, but if you start to ache at any point or start to feel fatigue, then just pause for a moment and shake the hands out. So shaking the hands out sitting down, you just need to have the legs a little bit further apart than usual and just shake in between them a bit, yeah? And also the legs as well, the feet. So we're going to try and put all these pieces together, yeah? Let me show you and explain. We start off in Tai Chi Sanzwang and we close the right hip as we shift the weight into the right foot. So now all my weight is in the right foot, my right hip is closed, my right hand is right close to it, and my left hand is reaching out as far as it's going to go. The left hip is open, all my weight is in the right side, then I step. Then I turn the pelvis and the hands follow it. It's almost like the hands are somehow connected to the hip joints. Shift the weight forwards, bring the weight into the left side. Now I've swapped over. I'm going to bring my right foot alongside my left. Shift my weight across into my right side and start all over again. So when you get to do the Tai Chi form, this is right at the start of the form pretty much. And you just do it once. But you know, it's really difficult to do. So I think it's really quite helpful to do it over and over again like this, in this Tai Chi walking style. There's a number of different Tai Chi walking exercises that I teach, and this is probably the hardest of them. Maybe not, but close to. It's certainly the most different than what you're used to doing in everyday life. Keep going, folks. And also just remember that if you feel like you're not getting it quite right, it doesn't matter. I just want you to give it a go. Erica, are you okay? I can't see you. Ah, there you are. Hello. Fantastic. So, why is it called earthquake? Because what happens is, theoretically, you're putting the force into the ground, and an equal and opposite force is coming out of the ground on the other side. So then you do it on the other side. Earthquake. So before we have a shakeout, just as a quick reminder, if you're liking this, then what I'd like you to do is to practice the first bit, which is just the straightforward walking. So you're just shifting your weight across. There's no pelvic movement going on, and stepping forwards when there's no weight in that foot, and then shifting the weight across and forwards into that foot, and then stepping forwards, and so on. It's a super exercise to practice. And once you get this nailed, then the next steps become much easier. Let's have a quick shake out of the hands and feet, and then we'll do a closing exercise, which you can do seated or standing. So first of all, shaking out the hands. and then shaking out the feet. So remember, if you're standing up, find something that you can just not lean on, but just sort of hold for security. Stand with the feet together and then lift one foot off the ground and move it forwards, hovering above the ground about a foot length, and then tilt it using the heel so that the toes are trying to point upwards and you're stretching the back of the leg down. If you're seated, stretch the leg forwards and lock it out so that you're stretching out of the hip joints down the full length of the leg in either approach, standing or sitting. And then give it a shake. Somewhat easier to shake if you're standing up than if you're sitting down, but you can give it a go sitting down as well, actually. The other difference, of course, between sitting and standing is when you're standing, you've actually got the foot off the ground. When you're sitting, you can't do that. You've got to let it rest on the ground. When you've given the one side a good shake out, bring the feet back together again and do the same on the other side. And a quick. Okay, this can be done seated and standing. If you're sitting down, just make sure that you're still doing this thing where you're a little bit forward so that the feet have got some of the weight. Yeah. And you may need to make some adjustments to the hand movements. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Just to make space, make way for your legs. If you're standing up, your legs won't be in your way. So standing up, we're just going to be standing in the Wu Ji, the first stance I got us to do that I talked us through in detail. So the weight's centered on the balls of the feet. We've got a nice strong structure in the feet. The ankles, knees and hips are soft. We're stretching the head upwards, but we've got a little bit of a forwards lean as well. Arms are relaxed, shoulders are relaxed. But then you want to elongate the arms just gently so that you're kind of moving the tips of the fingers towards the floor. And then rotate the arms and the shoulder joints so the palms face forwards. And then your imaginary friends again are gently drawing your hands out sideways so they have to rise up. And as they do so, rotate the arms again in the shoulder joints so that by the time you get to here, horizontal, the palms of the hands are facing the ceiling. Carry on going up a little way and then bend at the elbows so that you can make an apex just in front and just above the top of your head. And then we just send downwards. We're just shifting this apex down in front of the body. Down, 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 down. Try and get it to go as far down as it will go. And then we carry on doing that. And if you want to, you can do a bit of breathing with this as well. So from here, you should be fully inhaled, and then you just breathe out. But you need to have the pelvic floor lifted up a little bit because you don't want to have too much downward force. So the pelvic floor gives you an opposite force, but also you should try to lift the head up. So you should be fully exhaled here, and then we change and we breathe in, lifting the pelvic floor up vigorously. Hold your breath here on this part of the movement, and then breathe out on this part of the movement. As you're going down with the hands, you really need to have a vigorous stretch up through the top of the head. Breathing in. Breathing out. Okay, so just a few more details as we're going. Breathing in. Keep your shoulders soft. Don't lift the arms up with the shoulders. Try to keep them down. Make sure you do bend the elbows. Yeah, so it's quite a bend there. And make sure you're stretching vertically upwards as you're pushing down through the hands. Keeping the head on top of the shoulders. Everyone's looking lovely, except for one thing. I'd like to see you all smile, if I could, please. I'm concentrating. Concentrate with a smile. All right, we'll do one more go round, yeah? So we finish on the downward stroke. So one more go round, breathing in, keeping the shoulders soft, bending at the elbows, and then lifting the pelvic floor up and pushing down, pushing the top of the head up. So quite a vigorous push for the very last one. As you're coming down, see if you can put your awareness in the middle of your belly, whatever that might mean to you. And just hold it there as you relax the arms again, back to where they started. Check in on your posture. Just make sure the head's back on top of the shoulders. The shoulders are soft. The legs are soft. And you've got a good structure in the feet. Fantastic. Thank you very much, folks. You've
Okay.